Hello everyone, Dan Swift here, founder and CEO at Numentum, and welcome to the Speaker Series, where we spotlight some of the most interesting minds in the world of revenue generation. At Numentum, we help forward-thinking B2B organizations create better buyer experiences and deliver new momentum to their revenue engine. On this episode of the Speaker Series, we speak with Iris Meijer, Chief Marketing Officer at Verizon Business. We have a great conversation around the Finnish concept of sisu, empowering teams to build deep relationships, and the need sometimes to over-communicate. Welcome to the Speaker Series.
Dan, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Oh, thank you so much. So how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. I just actually recently relocated to New York from London, so it's been an interesting 4 months.
The city that never sleeps. So how is life treating you in the city that never sleeps?
Oh, it's wonderful. I have always loved the energy of New York, so I'm really very much enjoying myself here. But I do have to admit that the cold January, that was quite a shock to my system. And yes, I know I'm originally from Finland, so this is probably really, really embarrassing. But I think the 17 years in London have completely made me chicken when it comes to cold weather.
I did see a beautiful picture you posted on LinkedIn. I think you just arrived in New York with oodles of snow. But yeah. What are you missing? What are you missing about London? Is there anything you're missing already?
Oh, you know, I can't deny I do miss London from time to time. And actually, just yesterday, I was seeing in social media, all my friends in London, they were posting these beautiful sunny pictures from spring in London. And that's a special moment in London, the spring and sun and all that. But also, I do miss the British accent. So
I'll do what I can for you today. How does that sound?
That's why I agreed to talk to you, Dan, you know?
There you go. Perfect. Love it. Well, let's jump in if we could. So about 4 months or so into your new role, right, as a CMO and SVP of Commercial Operations at Verizon Business. And how have you been spending your time so far? What have you been up to?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's been wonderful 4 months, by the way. I have experienced nothing but the warmest and kindest of welcomes. And so I feel very fortunate to work with such amazing people. So I've really focused a lot of my energy in getting to my team, getting to know my team, getting to know my colleagues, and getting to know the business, as well as visit our stores. And, you know, as a marketer, it is so important to have your ear on the ground and really hearing what the reps are saying in the stores, what are the customer pain points, and also what the partners are hearing about the market.
Amazing. And with everything we've all gone through in the last 2 years, it's probably nice to get out there and meet the people. What's on the docket for the rest of this year? So what are we in now? We are recording this in April, so the next 6 months or so.
Well, you know, I'm just following my 90, 180, 360 plan. So just joking aside, this is for Verizon. This is our most important year yet. So customers absolutely first in everything we do. And we have such an exciting year ahead of us. We've been talking a lot about 5G and the opportunities it brings. We're talking about nationwide business internet, mobile edge computing. So a lot of really exciting things. But for me personally as well, I'm very focused on my team and building the right kind of culture, common values, standards, and priorities.
Now, I have to ask you this. 9 years with Nokia, nearly 4 years with Vodafone Business, now starting with Verizon Business. So first of all, wow, like your journey is an inspiration, not only to myself, but so many people. But what is it about this industry that has kept you just so engaged and on the top of your game for so long?
It's so dynamic. I really love and I'm so passionate about how this industry transforms how people, businesses, and technologies, how they interact. And I think the pandemic really kind of like shone a light to this industry if you think about supporting critical infrastructure to hospitals, amazing. Remote learning, remote working, it's just so special to me. And you know, not to forget, providing critical connectivity during natural disasters as well. So I think that's one of the things. But I think it's not just the industry, actually. I'm very passionate about marketing. And I feel marketing has such an essential role in the company's success. So I think that's kind of like what's driven me as well. And within this industry, trying to make change. I am so tired, and I'm sure there are many other CMOs who are so tired of marketing being seen as a cost center. I feel that's such an archaic mindset. And I strongly believe, and I know for a fact, that marketing can be a strategic driver to growth for business. So that's kind of like what's really driven me in keeping focused, especially in this industry.
I couldn't agree more. When I launched Empire, selling my first hire, it could have been anyone. It was my chief marketing officer, my first hire. It's so true. I mean, I believe you cannot do this without being joined at the hip with marketing. You just can't do it in today's world. What's your why? I've got to ask you.
My why is really knowing that I'm making a difference. That's my why.
And how does that making a difference impact how you operate and interact with your colleagues, with customers, partners, even people in your personal life?
To the how then, and the how is really important. And I firmly believe in this kind of like what you just mentioned and what I said earlier, that when you understand the why, you really know and understand the how. And let me give you a couple of examples. So I am very passionate about smaller businesses. And we know they were hit the hardest during the pandemic as well. There were many still relying on brick and mortar with no online presence. So it was really, really hard. So first of all, for Verizon, it's so rewarding to be digitizing these customers. But it is not just that. We are there with them every step of the way. We launched a platform called Small Business Digital Ready. And there we provide all the tools for the customers as well. Expert coaching, peer-to-peer networking, learning models. So that's how you show that you really make a difference. But it's also the people I'm working with and the people in my personal life. I really strive to make a difference to them as well. And you know, sometimes it's the little things, but actually they can make a huge difference. Just asking someone, how are you? Recognizing their work, or bringing your spouse a coffee, which is completely failed this morning, by the way. I promised to do that. I forgot so. But like little things matter.
It's so true. It is the little things. And I want to talk about leadership a little later on, but so many people speak so highly of you. So I definitely want to dig into your approach to leadership and how you think about that. But there's another post as well before we get to leadership. And it's such a sweet post. You mentioned your wedding anniversary was approaching, and you shared some congratulations. You shared some things that you'd learned from your husband. And those three things, I'm going to actually read them for everyone listening today. The first one was stop negative self-talk and instead try to practice positive self-talk. The second one made me smile. Humor and laughter are the best stress management tools. And then the final one was don't sweat the small stuff and don't worry about the things that haven't even happened yet or are out of your control. And I read it and I was like, well, okay, all three of those are resonating right now. But walk me through them. Why those three things in particular?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I'm a perfectionist, or actually, like one of my team members so aptly put it, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So being a perfectionist, I used to dwell on mistakes for days on end. Seriously. And I was like looking at just like silly little things. I can unfortunately see all the spelling mistakes. I can see if font sizes are different, like the tiniest details, typography, everything. And I need to be in control. So I think that's one of the reasons I've been so successful in my career, but that can also hinder you. Because in the end of the day, if you don't embrace your mistakes, your team is not going to embrace their mistakes, and you are not going to be innovative. You can't be innovative if you don't do mistakes and really embrace the mistakes. So learning to focus on only, like, you can't always be on control. So focus on the future, focus on what you can control. It's been such a kind of like revelation for me. And my husband has been a fantastic partner to look at and learn from. He certainly doesn't sweat the small stuff. So I think that's one of the area. But then also, and I think this is true to many women, and I'm sure for some men as well, but although being successful in your career, you have a good work self-esteem, but sometimes you have this famous imposter syndrome. And I say famous because I'm in a good class with Michelle Obama as well, who thank God mentioned that she even has it sometimes. But then, watching my husband, who has a very healthy, not arrogant, but very healthy, positive self-esteem, it's really made me wonder, like, why are we women so often so focused on a negative self-talk? And instead of really just thinking on the positive, and also when you look at the future, think it's like positively, yeah, of course it can happen. And yes, of course I can win this customer on moving it in a positive mindset. So I think that's kind of like one. And I think part of the perfectionist is also that sometimes you get stressed about being in control, and then having a partner who is just kind of like making a joke at your worst moments. It's not always appreciated at that very moment, but it's a wonderful way to actually realize that what really matters in life.
Isn't imposter syndrome a fascinating topic? Because I suffer from that too, 100%. And I think a lot of, like you said, high performers do. And every single time doing what I do and training people, I always go into it with a healthy dose of anxiety, thinking, am I going to get called out for stating the obvious? And are people going to learn from me? And then every single session at the end of it, people's minds are blown. And I leave thinking, okay, well, maybe they did learn something today. It's such a strange thing. Let me talk a little bit about the industry itself. So you mentioned a few things that you've learned. Are those things you've just shared with everyone, are those things that you've learned during the last couple of years during the pandemic about yourself, or have these been learnings that have kind of developed and come to the forefront of your mind over a longer period of time?
I think those are probably something that have been happening like longer period of time. I think one thing will happen in the pandemic, and what I learned throughout the pandemic, it was actually quite interesting, because as a marketing and communications professional, I of course know and I preach the importance of communication. But what I realized during the pandemic is that I failed in having proper communication to my team. I myself work very well under pressure. And of course, with pandemic happening in marketing, especially, we had to change our plans overnight. And I was striving in that environment. And what I didn't realize is, of course, not everybody reacts the same. And with pandemic, with a lot of pressure and on people's personal lives as well, you can never underestimate the importance of communication. And what I've learned is, like, you literally have to over communicate. You need to reassure your people. You need to keep their engagement levels up. It's not always easy. And I realized that I wasn't prepared for it myself. And I am the communications professional. So that was kind of like, wow moment for me.
What was your aha moment? Did someone call you out and sort of say, "Hey, listen, Iris, slow down and bring us with you," or did you? How did that realization happen?
So I've been always lucky to have people in my team who are honest with me and challenge me, and that's what I love, and that's, you mentioned my leadership style. So yeah, my team members said that, hey, we don't really know what's going on, and we need you to communicate more. And I was like, oh my God, yes, of course, I'm here.
Yeah, I thought I was, but you said it, over communicating in those times of turmoil or stress or whatever it might be. Speaking of which, nice little segue. So you also posted, obviously we follow each other on LinkedIn, but I think I want to say this right, sisu?
Sisu, yes.
Sisu, okay, see, I do follow you. So it feels particularly relevant based on the last couple of years. Do you mind explaining for our listeners what that term is and why you posted about it?
Yeah, so I already mentioned I'm originally from Finland, and Finland's very small European country. We have a lot of weird and wonderful things in the country, and sisu is one of those. I guess you could call it like gut felt quality. It is actually quite hard to translate into English. There's no one English word for it. It can mean courage, willpower, bravery, tenacity, resilience, grit. It's literally like just an action-oriented mindset, like resilient mindset. And yeah, you refer to pandemic, and I think that's kind of like nice way to explain how sisu is important. During the pandemic, many people felt that they faced a challenge that almost felt like beyond their capacity to cope. And part of sisu is really like looking at all the situations, no matter how bad or difficult they are, acknowledging them, acknowledging the reality of what's happening, but then figuring out how to move forward, having a plan, and focusing on what really matters. And the interesting thing is that there's a lot of like leadership work, talk about, for example, educated optimism and the importance of that. Well, sisu is literally that. It's also educated optimism. But also, if you think about resilience, and we all went through tough times during the pandemic, some more than others and in different ways. And resilience in itself, it is actually also a key foundation for mental health and well-being. So I think sisu, it encompasses so many different things that really help us to be resilient and focus on the kind of like action and having this educated, like practical optimism.
I really enjoyed it. And on a personal note, it came at the perfect time for me because I just had my third child. Got two other kids, as you know, and I was exhausted, as was my wife. We weren't sleeping much. Obviously running a business and all the challenges that come with it. And the post popped up and I read it. I was like, yeah, that's what I need right now. Some sisu. So it was spot on. And again, not just that, but the post itself. I think that's the wonders of LinkedIn, where these wonderful things just appear in the feed. Sometimes it's just the right moment to just give you that little nudge for the day. So thank you. That's great.
I know. Yeah, and it's been wonderful. My team is like calling me now. It's like, yeah, I think we need the sisu mindset at the moment.
Yeah, so. There it is. I think we're going to bring that into the Empire team, but there we go. We actually met during the pandemic, remotely, I might add, virtually, during your tenure at Vodafone Business. And you were actually in the buying committee that evaluated and ultimately brought Empire selling into Vodafone Business. So do you mind just very briefly sharing with our listeners, why were you so keen from the marketing side of the organization to empower the business and the sales organization in the way in which you did?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it was such an important moment for us and such an important relationship and very meaningful. So, and I think the world had already moved to digital before pandemic, but obviously it accelerated things. And we've faced a situation, and I'm as guilty as many others, that people actually quite often forgot how to behave online. They forgot that actually we are the same people, even if we are in the online environment. And also we were facing a situation that our field sales, they were used to meeting people, customers face to face. Marketeers were used to having physical events. We were all a little bit kind of like, oh, wow, how do we work in this new environment? And what was really key for me with working with Empire Selling, and I think you mentioned it at the beginning as well, is kind of like how to make the relationship even deeper online. And you can do that. And I think your passion came true. It is not just selling, or it is not just marketing, but it's actually empowering our teams to build these relationships. And what was wonderful to see is examples of both marketers and salespeople explaining how they actually started completely new relationships and built fully in an online environment. I mean, I'm still getting goosebumps.
Well, I love the fact that you and I haven't actually met in person yet. Here we are.
And, I know, right?
and Ben Elms, I'm having breakfast with for the first time on Friday here in New Jersey. So absolutely priceless. But again, relationships were built.
To my favorite Ben.
Of course I will. Absolutely. Now, I want to bring you back to leadership. So many people speak so highly of you. Many of your LinkedIn recommendations, I read through all of them. Passion, creative energy, commitment, integrity, and obviously leadership. So how would you describe your leadership style?
Well, you've been too kind, but I think those words very much describe my leadership style. I would say I have very transparent leadership style, very authentic. And I would like to think I project positive energy. And I think that's really, really important, because the emotions you express will affect those around you. So if you want a positive and enthusiastic team members, you have to show up positive and enthusiastic yourself. I firmly believe in that. But I do also want to push the envelope. So I do want to innovate and try results. And there, this sisu mindset, getting things done and done well, really comes to play. But you know, Dan, I think in the end of the day, creating an empowered and collaborative workspace is the key. And any single leader is nothing without an engaged team. No great things in business are just never done by one person. So I think it's always a team of people, and that's what you need to focus on.
Has your style changed over time? Do you feel as though it's developed since you first became a leader? And if so, how so?
Yeah, no, absolutely I have. I still realize, like, one of the things that my so-called pitfall is like speed. And it can be a good thing, and it is about me pushing the envelope. But I think when early on in my career, sometimes my speed meant that my team wasn't with me. So I was going 100 miles an hour, and my team was like, hello, we are here, come on, take us with you.
Yeah.
So I think at least I am more conscious of that now, and I'm always trying to take my team with me. And it's really about the point of if your team is not with you, if they're not engaged and empowered, you're not going to get there.
Yeah. We had exactly the same conversation, and you said it earlier on, in terms of over communicating, right, and bringing your team with you. My team called me out on that about a year ago and said, Dan, you've got to, they call me Swifty, slow down, right? Bring us along for the ride. We can't support you effectively unless we know where we're going. So as ever, Iris, yeah, we're aligned.
But what I really like about, and what I mentioned earlier as well, like, your team comes to you and tells how it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way, like we have to hear the feedback, and we have to be challenged. And that's the power of the team, is that you challenge each other. That's the way to evolve and get better.
It has been hard during the pandemic. And what have been some of the challenges that you've experienced while working remotely and trying to lead the business, right? Because at both Vodafone Business and now at Verizon, we're coming out of this pandemic, fingers crossed. But what have been some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think I referred to it a little bit earlier, but like keeping people engaged and motivated, that is tough virtually. And I think we've all learned to live in that environment, but keeping the energy levels up and also being mindful, avoiding the burnout effect that comes with this fully digital environment. We don't have commute anymore to unwind after a day. We don't have, walking from one meeting room to another, or we don't have the coffee talks. So our days from, 7, 8 till late in the evening are back-to-back in calls, and sometimes 30-minute calls. It's like your mind is blown by just trying to manage that. So I think we all need to be super, super mindful of managing this kind of like well-being aspect as well, and ensuring that our teams care for themselves as well, and not just, because many have been having caretaker responsibilities, looking after their families, then trying to manage work. That's very, very tough. Yeah. So I think that's kind of like finding that balance is certainly one of the challenges. And for me personally, I mean, Dan, you mentioned we haven't never met, but can you imagine? I moved from London to New York. I changed jobs, and I had never seen anyone from Verizon in person. I never, before the pandemic, never imagined that would happen.
Right. It's wild, isn't it? And I want to also pick up on something you said earlier, which I think it just hit me as you were talking. You said, ask people, how are you doing? And so many people do that, and then they just push on, and they don't look for the response or the body language. And then and it's like, no, how are you? And a lot of people use the get out, right? Yeah, good. Yeah, fine, excellent, whatever. Yeah. No, how are you doing? Yeah. And I think just for leaders listening,
you mentioned that, Dan. And what I actually do is quite often I do the quick, how are you? And then they say, yeah. Fine. And I was like, how are you really? Yeah, like I just I won't leave the topic. And that's probably part of a Finn in me. I remember years ago when I was studying, I studied half a year in Canada. Mm-hmm. In Finland, if you ask someone how they are, they actually explain to you how they feel. So then I moved to Canada for half a year, and people were like, how are you, Iris? This happy. And I started to explain, yeah, good. However, and they were like 10 meters that way. And I was like, what happened here? So I think we always need to remember that we have this, and I have it now after 17 years in London, especially like automatic, how are you, good? How are you, fine? But we need to stop and really, how are you? Yeah. How are you doing? What's going on in your life?
Yeah. And people listening, ask your leaders that. My CMO asked me that. And I think this was yesterday or the day before. And I paused for a moment and went, well, thank you for asking A, and B, not great. I'm exhausted. And then we started chatting about what was going on in both of our lives. And it took our relationship to yet the next level of understanding on a personal note what we were both dealing with. So it's phenomenal.
It's vulnerability.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Leaders are, I think, a little worried about oversharing, but I've learned over the years that the more I share and the more open I am, right, the more people are with me, which helps me lead,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Let's talk talent. Okay. The great resignation is underway, so to speak. So when I chat with business leaders like yourself, a big point sometimes is hiring. So how are you thinking about building your talent bench at Verizon Business?
Yeah, it's a good question. Everybody's talking about the great resignation. And in the end of the day, and I mentioned earlier as well in a different context, but any company's greatest assets is their people. So that's really important. I think we are very fortunate at Verizon. We have a CEO who takes this very seriously. And he's very focused on the diversity and the culture of the company and the leadership imperatives. It's very focused on talking about 4 stakeholders. So instead of just shareholders, you have to care for your employees and the society and, of course, customers. So I think that's been very, very good for us. But at the end of the day, it is finding the balance of really having a proper culture to retain your best talent, providing them learning and development opportunities, but also having this kind of like purpose-driven culture that attracts also talent. And I think the world has changed and shifted during the pandemic as well. And a lot of the people are nowadays really requiring companies to be more purpose-driven. Not anymore like green wash or pink wash or like truly purpose-driven. And I think that kind of culture really, really helps to attract people as well.
Another topic I want to touch on before we move into the next little segment is, you touched about a little bit on it earlier in terms of marketing and a seat at the table and the executive seat at the table. But there's so much talk and so much noise around sales and marketing alignment. And I know you do this so well. So what's your take on this particular topic?
You can only do it well when you have the most amazing sales leaders on the other side of the table. But Dan, do I remember correctly? But I have this recollection that you posted a couple of months back, a blog post about this one. It was like the disconnect and some of the key drivers for the disconnect between marketing and sales. And I think one of them was this whole functional misalignment between business goals, because sales obviously is very focused on driving revenue and also driving revenue like the next quarter and the next half a year. And marketing can have different metrics, talking about brand and the future. But I do think that there is an alignment there as well, because the thing is, there's so many studies, which actually not that many people are focused on, that brand is absolute key for long-term sales growth. Absolute key. I've seen so many studies, and I've seen it in reality as well. If you're only focused on the tactical demand generation and you don't do any brand activation, you won't get the same results. So I think it's a lot to do with education, but then it is absolutely aligning the KPIs and ensuring that both parties are accountable. And I think that's the key thing. And I think you mentioned in the blog as well, the kind of like different language, but you need to ensure that you have the same KPIs, same language as well. And I think there's starting to be a lot of talk about the death of the marketing qualified leads. And I am happy to kill the marketing qualified leads. The point is not whether it's marketing qualified, it is whether actually the customer is ready for conversation or not, for example. However you label it, but you need to have the alignment. What I'm saying always to my sales counterparts is like, there's only so much I can do. If you don't do it together with me, if we don't share the goals, they are not going to be successful. I am certainly not going to be successful.
Yeah, it's so true. And as a salesperson, I was never trained on how to leverage marketing or how to use assets effectively. And I had to proactively go learn that. And I think part of what we're bringing to the table, candidly, is teaching sellers how to better leverage marketing to be more, but educating them, right, on how to do this.
Absolutely. And it's of course there will always be healthy tension, but I'd rather there be healthy tension than no tension or negative tension, in the point of kind of like neither party really understand each other. Right. So it's just being open and education and all that. And I found that sales leaders are loving the collaboration. And you know, at Vodafone Business, we have such a close collaboration with Ben. And I'm so fortunate to have absolutely amazing salespeople at Verizon Business as well, who are kind of like, Iris, come here, help us, let's do this together. And I'm like, yay.
I love it. Now, I got to ask you this. How do you stay balanced? You've got a massive job, huge role, significant responsibility. How do you stay balanced?
Oh, well, I cannot deny it's been crazy first few months, especially now. But I think it's in the end of the day, it's focused on what really matters. And for me, it's my husband, my friends, and my family, and they keep me grounded. It's not always easy, and I think the most important thing for leaders is also like we are so focused on serving our people and our customers, but we need to be kind to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not always easy. For me, exercise. I
Mm-hmm.
have to exercise, and Pilates is my exercise. If I start my morning with Pilates, I know it's going to be a good day. I know I get the energy boost. So I think everyone just needs to find what they go to, and for me, it's my friends and family and Pilates.
Amazing. If I could get on the Peloton every morning, that would be my thing. That's my wife's thing. And she's every morning, Dan, just get on the bike. I'm like, yeah. And then my excuses come in. But there we go. Moving on. Frustrations. Okay, you're allowed to have them. So what is a non-starter for you? Is there anything that frustrates you about business, life, people? What is it?
Yes. So I think for me is it's, I don't know whether it's a cultural mindset, but this kind of like, oh, we've always done it this way, or it will not work, or we've tried it before, didn't work. I just see red. I totally see red, because for me it's like, okay, you've tried something before, great, it didn't work. What went wrong? What did we learn from that? And how could we ensure that now when we do it, we don't do it again the same way, and maybe it works. I just, that is something that really gets me every time. I'm so focused on the solutions, not the problems. And I think related to that, now I'm on a roll, but
yeah, keep going.
Related to that is when people complain, but they don't do anything about it. And I think it's just so important it is important to recognize, okay, this didn't work, fine, but what are you going to do about it? Again, it's about the solutions.
Now, before we let you go, if you're open to it, I would love to do what's called the quick fire round. Quick questions. If you're up for it, some of the questions I might, depending on your answer, might pause you and ask you to go a little deeper. Do you want to give it a go?
Okay, let's try.
All right, let's do it. So, question number one: who is your hero?
It's my dad.
Oh, do you want to share why?
Yeah, I think I'm lucky to have a husband who is very positive. My dad is very positive as well. He left home when he was 14. So I think considering the challenges of leaving home when you are 14, everything what he has done, he's made his life, and he stayed always positive. And he always taught me, he said, we don't have much money, Iris, but you will study so that you can enjoy life.
Dad, well done. Best sales leader that you've ever partnered with?
Oh, Dad. I don't think I'm able to tell you one leader. I've been just so lucky throughout my career at Nokia, Vodafone Business, Verizon Business. I've partnered with the best sales leaders in the industry.
There you go. A very diplomatic answer. I like it.
I know, right?
Are you a morning lark, or are you more of a night owl?
Oh, night owl, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. The last Halloween costume.
Oh no.
Bit random.
Though fancy dress party, Dan, is an absolute nightmare for me. Absolute worst nightmare ever. So I leave it at that.
Moving on. Your favorite city in the world?
San Francisco.
Oh, how so? I love it too, but any particular reason?
So I lived there just over a year, I think 2017, 2018. It's just hey, coming from Finland, it's always sunny there. And I know the people in San Francisco don't agree with me. I think it's always sunny there. It's beautiful, it's walkable.
Beautiful. Any city or country that you've not visited that you'd like to visit?
New Zealand.
Ah, it's a beautiful country. How many cups of coffee a day?
One. Well, sometimes
Just the one?
two.
There you
Maybe
go.
one.
I'm not sure whether you're going to answer this one as well, but the favorite manager that you've ever had?
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, you know, Dan, I think every single manager I've had, I've always learned something new. So however, whether they're my favorite or not, I always learn something new, and they've helped me to develop as a person and also in my career.
Beautiful. Last question for you, but it's a big one. What would you tell your younger self?
Be kind to yourself and don't always be such a perfectionist.
I love it. I love it. Iris, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us.